reunite a little bit with Sarah over email and over phone the past few weeks. Her family lived across the street from our family, the very first house we ever bought. And so that house held a lot of sentiment. And I remember when we finally sold it, our family was expanding. We needed to move to a little bit bigger house. I sat on the front porch and cried because it was such a neat neighborhood, and Sarah and her family were part of the reason I cried in a good way. So, all right. So we're recording this for posterity.
We are, but
all
we
right.
also aren't on the screen for some reason. So,
Okay. Well, let me go ahead and talk. Well, yeah, I'll just keep talking. I'm a lawyer and a preacher, so I have never lacked for words. I heard a story about a Texas billionaire who had a beautiful daughter that he wanted to get someone to marry, but he wanted to make sure it was the right person. And so he invited all the eligible bachelors from all around to come to his house for a big party. And of course, it was a beautiful mansion and lots of rooms. And eventually he took everybody down to his indoor swimming pool. And they all gathered around the pool, and they could see the water was kind of churning. And it turned out that there were alligators and piranha in the pool. And he said, boys, I have a challenge to lay down in front of you. He said, you can see I have a beautiful daughter here, and I am going to give her hand in marriage to a man who is brave enough to swim the length of this pool. Or you could choose, if you swim the length of this pool, instead of my daughter, you could choose 1,000 head of my finest cattle, or you could choose 500 acres of my greatest land. Now, you get your pick of the three. Is anybody brave enough? And then all of a sudden, poosh, he hears this splash. And in just a minute, a guy is getting up at the other end of the pool. He's swum the length of it. So the dad charges down there and he goes, congratulations, young man. He said, you are an epitome of bravery. He said, now you get your choice, one of three things. Do you want 1,000 head of my finest cattle? And the young man says, no, sir. He said, well, do you want 500 acres of my greatest land? No, sir. So he kind of puffed up and he said, well, it must be that you want the hand of my daughter in marriage. And he said, no, sir. He said, well, boy, what is it that you want? I want the name of the man that pushed me in the pool. So we all have different motivations in life. That guy was involuntarily motivated. But I want to talk to you about Goodwill and what motivated me. I was a lawyer for 35 years. Most days I enjoyed that. But as you imagine, and particularly if you've been in the legal system in one way or another, it's called an adversarial system for a reason. You have adversaries, and sometimes they're not friendly adversaries, although I would say the vast majority of the lawyers that I worked with or against were professional, and we dealt with each other in a camaraderie sort of way whilst being zealous advocates for our clients. But some of them weren't so trustworthy. And it's funny, I had one fellow in particular that I always remember. I had to send everything to him certified mail because he claimed he never got a letter from me, even though nobody else seemed to ever have problems getting letters from me. Well, I saw him the other day on Facebook for the first time in years. He had been kicked out of the bar for some reason, and he was advertising kung fu lessons on Facebook. And he looked pretty good. I mean, he looked like he probably could teach you kung fu. But I didn't like to engage in kung fu or fighting in the court that much. And so in 2010, I decided I was going to take a little pivot and I was going to run for public office. And so I ran for statewide office in a year in which the D after somebody's name did not stand for Democrat. It stood for deadly. And so I lost that election, and that became my pivot point, my motivation to get into the nonprofit world. So my friend Reggie Whitten, who some of you may know, he's been very involved with OSU, and he tried the opioid case down in Norman, Oklahoma, that got some money for the state because of our opioid crisis. Anyway, Reggie had lost his son to uh, drugs and alcohol. And he asked me to, instead of going back to practicing law after that failed political endeavor, to enter the nonprofit field and help him educate young people about drugs and alcohol. So we've been up, we've talked to the OSU football team, some other athletic groups at OSU, and a lot of high schools across the state. So that was my first foray into the nonprofit world. And then I went to a place called Sunbeam Family Services, and we did a variety of things there. And then eventually I pivoted over to Goodwill. And I represented Goodwill as a lawyer. But I always tell people, I felt like I had only gotten on the front porch. I didn't know how big the house was. And it's a big house. And so when I became president of Goodwill 2.5 years ago, just before COVID, I decided I want to adopt a saying that hopefully begins to communicate more about how big a house Goodwill is and what we do. And so I adopted the terminology more than a store. That's what we are. You think of us as a store, but we're much more. So when you think of Goodwill, see if we can, my technology friend can help me. I am screen sharing, but it's not moving. Yeah, yeah. There we go. Okay. So what comes to mind? What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of Goodwill? Yeah, it's the stores. So we're a great place to shop, and you would be surprised by the great finds in some of our Goodwill stores. Some, there's gently used clothing, but sometimes you'll going through the rack and the price tag is still on an item because somebody got it home and it didn't fit and they decided to give it to Goodwill. Last year, we did a fashion show fundraiser, and all of our models wore clothing they found at Goodwill. And one of our truck drivers, has lots of tattoos, he's a really good looking guy, but he came out of the prison system and joined us, and he's doing a great job for us as a truck driver. And someone volunteered him to be a model. And I was sitting next to him at the meeting where we were kind of getting started, and he leans over to me and goes, "I don't do suits." I said, "Well, I'm not in charge of wardrobe." He said, "I'm not wearing a suit." I said, "You'll have to talk to your stylist about that." And they put him in a Pierre Cardin tuxedo that somebody had donated, looked brand new. That guy looked like $1 million. And you should have seen him when he was modeling it. The guy's a truck driver, but he looked like he was on the catwalk at Paris fashion show. He just loved, and he goes, "I look really good, don't I?" I said, "You do. You look like $1 million." So shopping and a place to donate, particularly after COVID, nobody else had anything to do when they were quarantined at home. And so people cleaned out their closets and brought their stuff to Goodwill. At one point, I had to go on television and tell people, please hold on to it because we're not open right now. We were shut down for 6 weeks, 2 weeks after I joined Goodwill. So it was kind of like, welcome to Goodwill, Mr. Priest, shut down Goodwill, Mr. Priest. And so I had to kind of pivot on the fly and learn to be flexible. I bought, how many of you remember Gumby and Pokey? I bought the little figures of Gumby and Pokey and put them on my desk to remind me to be flexible because we really had to make things up as we went along. So Tish was talking about how old Goodwill is and how old Goodwill is in Oklahoma. So she's exactly right. 1902, Reverend Edgar Helms, who was a United Methodist minister, graduated from seminary and was waiting his first assignment. And he had requested that he be sent to the most challenging and difficult mission field in the world. And he thought he was going to India, but he got sent to South Boston. And at that time in South Boston, the neighborhood he was assigned had people that spoke over 100 different languages. It was just a melting pot. And, Boston is a harbor and people come from the old country and they just planted themselves there, and people were not working, and if they were working, there was no childcare. And so they would lock their kids in the apartments and go to work, and the kids would be unsupervised, and they had needs and they were hungry. And he realized although he was assigned to the church, these people had needs beyond the spiritual needs. They had physical needs. They had needs for jobs. And so he got the idea, and he took a burlap bag and circulated around the more affluent sections of Boston and said, do you have any used items that you could spare? And people would give him toasters and clothing and that kind of thing. He would take it down. Eventually, he came up with this system to have the people repair those items if they were broken or they needed to be stitched up. And then they could either take those items as their pay, or he would pay them, and then they could buy what they needed. And so this idea caught wildfire, and it began to spread all across the United States. In 1935, Edgar Helms came to Oklahoma, and he spoke to Rotary. He spoke to the Rotary Club downtown Oklahoma City, and somebody was in the audience that day by the name of E.K. Gaylord. And Mr. Gaylord said, that sounds like something maybe we should have here. So he had a female journalist, one of the few in the nation at that time. And he said to her, I want you to check out Goodwill and see if they're legit. And if they are, I want you to get this started. And so in 1936, we filed our articles of incorporation. We became a company, and we've been serving people for over, it's now 86 years in the central Oklahoma area. Now there's 3 Goodwills in the state of Oklahoma. One's headquartered in Tulsa. Ours is in Oklahoma City, and we have jurisdiction over Stillwater. And then there's one down in Lawton. So we actually have 37 counties assigned to us, and we're looking to expand geographically over the next couple of years. So what do? Our mission is to help people overcome challenges to employment. Now, some of you know about challenges to employment. Maybe you personally had a difficulty because of something, and it could be something like dyslexia, and you weren't good at reading, and you struggled to fill out a job application, or maybe you had a physical infirmity that prevented you from doing or being what you wanted to be. I happen to be a type 1 diabetic. And so I would have had difficulty probably getting into my aspirational career, which was to be a Secret Service agent because of my disability. So there's all kinds of challenges. My first job was working in a department store or warehouse. And my mom said, Jim, you're 16. Go out and find a job. Don't come home till you have one. I was like, I'm still in high school. And she said, well, you can get a part-time job. Go get a part-time job. So, I mean, I went up and down the streets looking. Finally at 4:30, I put my application in at Day Brothers department store, and they hired me, and they said, can you be here at 6? And so I sprinted home, got something to eat, changed my clothes, went back to work. And that was my first work experience. And it wasn't a challenge for me other than, they had me do simple arithmetic, and that was challenging for me. But I didn't have to overcome a race barrier. I wasn't excluded from that job because of my gender. I wasn't excluded because I'd served time in jail. There are all kinds of impediments. Think about a track meet where you have to jump over those hurdles, the steeplechase. Those are the kinds of hurdles that many people face when they're trying to find a job. Maybe they are a different color than the hiring agent, or maybe there's a person that's in the hiring position and they have a bias. They think women can't be police officers, or women can't be science teachers. And so all of these are obstacles that have to be overcome. And that's what Goodwill does. We help people get their first foot on the first ladder, first rung of the ladder of success. And so whether they're coming out of jail, they have a physical disability, a mental disability, a background that has prevented them from acquiring digital skills. And we have a lot of people that come to us, they don't know a mouse from mice. They don't know how to navigate the internet. And you cannot apply for a job if you don't know how to navigate the internet. And so we help all of these people. We have 25 retail stores, one right here, not very far from here, 17 attended donation centers where it's just a standalone donation center and you can come drop off your stuff. We have about 800 employees and a $39 million budget, and it's a busy place. I always say I try not to stay away from the office too long because they can figure out they can do without me. So I try to get back there as quick as I can, but it is a busy place. Now I'm told that we don't have any sound. I'll see if we can at least see this. I don't know if some subtitles will pop up. No. So this is David Kirsch. While it's rolling, I'll just kind of tell you David's story. David has a felony on his record from 1999. It wasn't a violent felony, but it was a party felony, but it's still on his record, and it prevented him from getting a job. He moved to Oklahoma, hoping for a new lease on life, and he got a job at Goodwill. Everything that he had in the world, he brought in the trunk of his car. And now today, he is a member of management at Goodwill. He's a zealous advocate for what we do. I ran into him in the warehouse one day, and I do a Friday video. Every Friday, I go out and talk to the employees, and I interview people on just my handheld cell phone. And David came up to me, and he wanted to be in the Friday video. And he said, I just want to tell you what a great opportunity you all have given me. Tom Rogers is his boss, and Tom is a great leader. And he explained to David, I think you got potential for leadership. I want to hire you, put you in a position where you have a career ladder. And then he gave David a marble, and the marble probably pop up here in just a minute. And it's got different colors of it. And he said, this kind of represents what you're going to face as a leader. Not everything is clearly black and white. You're going to have to use your discretion. There's rules, there's guidelines, but you're going to have to use good judgment too. And so when I found out about that, I thought, well, that's a great illustration, but Tom had never given me a marble. So I had to go ask Tom for a marble. Tom said he had lost his marbles and he couldn't help very much. So I mentioned earlier the byword that I've tried to emphasize as I go out and speak everywhere is more than a store. We are more than a store. We provide all kinds of different services to the community. And this gives you an idea of this, what we call the circular economy. 85%, Tish was telling us, goes to landfills, but just our Goodwill alone kept 25 million pounds of items from going to the landfill this past year. So if we can take things that people would have chucked in their dumpster or thrown away and put it back into the economy in some fashion, we're saving as much as we can stuff from going back into the landfill too quickly. Some of you maybe have heard of a term called fast fashion. I didn't know much about fashion before I joined Goodwill, and people tell me I still don't. But the fast fashion industry makes items that are not very well made. And so you wear them once, twice, three times, and they're kind of worn out or they rip. And so people get rid of them, they throw them away. So fast fashion is contributing a lot to that 85%. So when you give us a donation up at the top of that circle, you see that donation goes to our retail stores. We have 25 stores, as I mentioned, and we mark it, we give it a color code, green, yellow, blue, red, and that tells us how long it should stay in the store. Most items stay in the store 4 weeks. And on the 4th week, it's 50% off. So you may see advertising that'll say, this is the red tag week at Goodwill. So everything red tagged has been there 3 weeks. The final week it's there, it's 50% off. And then if it doesn't sell then, we take it back to the warehouse in Oklahoma City, and it goes to our outlet store where people can buy by the pound. So the more you buy, the less price per pound it is. And it is like Black Friday every day at the outlet store. They are lined up, and a lot of them are dealers. They, are buying stuff that they think they can resell on eBay, but a lot of them are poor family members that are looking for the greatest bargain that they can. And then if it doesn't sell at the outlet store, then it goes into recycling. And we either recycle items or we package them in 1,000 pound bales, and we sell them to salvage dealers. And sometimes they're sold overseas. Sometimes they're sold domestically. Sometimes they're used to make wipe rags for garage and mechanics and that sort of thing. So we try to get every nickel worth of value out of your donations. And all that money, whether it's from the store, the outlet store, the salvage operation, goes into our job training program. And we have some great programs and particularly target certain populations. So it used to be when we started, we almost exclusively dealt with people who had physical disabilities. Now we work with the unemployed or the underemployed, people who lack digital skills. We have 3 programs, YEP, REP, and VEP. My folks love acronyms like that. So Youth Employment Preparation Program, the Reentry Employment Preparation Program, and the Veterans Employment Preparation Program to help people get ready for jobs, how to interview, how to fill out an application, what does a resume look like, why you need to have both soft skills and hard skills, how do you quit a job? You know, these are all things that we teach in the employment preparation. And I just got a report this morning. One of the youth that went through our YEP program just got a job, and his mom called to thank us. And she said, I don't think he would have gotten that job except for what he learned at Goodwill. And so we do that with young people. We do it with people coming out of jail. Very difficult. And how do you talk about how you spent the last 5 years if you've been in prison? It's kind of an awkward conversation. So we do practice interviews with them and get them to be truthful, but not to be embarrassed and hang their head, but say, you know, I made some wrong choices, but I've paid my penalty and I'm ready to get back and be a contributing member of society. And we're helping people really, you know, the recidivism rate, the rate at which people end up going back to jail is so high. We're hoping to dent that and keep people out of jail by getting them to be productive citizens. So we also go on the road. This is our mobile job connection center. And so we took a bus and reconverted it. And so we've got it's kind of a mini computer lab, and we can go out to sites. Sometimes we go to our stores and park in the parking lot. Sometimes we go to fellow partner agencies of nonprofits, and we try to take our services out to where the people are and they need them. And we provide job placement and job training. You can get a job. If you don't have a job and you come into our job placement center, you might get a job at Goodwill if you want to, or we keep a list that's updated daily with openings in the metro area or wherever you want to work. And we'll tell you that we think this particular job matches your skill set. And now here's a surprise you probably don't know. We provide commercial cleaning and unarmed security services. Many of the folks that work for us in these programs have a disability of some type, but it doesn't prevent them from providing excellent service. And this is an area that's really growing for us. And a lot of folks don't know that we do this. So I've put some literature on the table. If you have a need or you know of someone that has commercial cleaning needs or unarmed security needs, we don't do armed security, but we do unarmed security. Look to Goodwill, and you'll not only get good people to help you with what you need, but you'll be contributing to the community. And then we help jobless vets. And I mentioned that before. Who doesn't want to help veterans after all they've done for us? And we can help them find jobs. Now, this one does have subtitles. Let's see. This particular video is about David Allender. He's a store associate at the Goodwill here in Stillwater. And David has a vision problem. He's almost going blind. He's visually completely impaired in one eye and has decreasing vision in the other. But I'll let you just, it's like a foreign film. You can read the subtitles. He didn't think he was going to be able to get a job anywhere. This gentleman, some of you may know, Ted Willendorf. Ted was our store manager here in Stillwater for a long time, and he's now been promoted to a regional manager. And David brings his dog. to the store every day. So David and I have become Facebook friends over the years, and we stay in touch quite often, and we're helping him with some new equipment that'll help him be able to do work the cash register despite his visual impairment. So I'm a Rotarian, and I thought, well, you know, like Tish was saying, the word Goodwill is in the four-way test, right? So how do we apply the four-way test to Goodwill? Well, is it the truth that people need help finding employment? Absolutely. Is it fair to everyone concerned? Absolutely. I sometimes tell people, you know, the thing about Goodwill, people think they give us their clothes and that's good enough. We really need financial contributions too, but Goodwill's not something that comes to mind. And I always tell our folks at Goodwill, people want to give to puppies and babies, right? And we don't have puppies and babies. So what do we have? Well, we give people jobs so they can buy puppies and so they can raise a family and have babies. And a job is so much more than a paycheck. It's a sense of self-worth as well. Will doing our work produce goodwill and better friendships? Absolutely. That's a lot of what a job is, as well as being a sense of belonging. And then finally, is it beneficial to all concerned? Absolutely. So see how perfectly the Goodwill mission lines up with the Rotary. So here's how you can help. And I'm sure you're asking that question. I'll be deluged with requests afterwards. How can I help? Well, here's what you can do. Shop our stores. Our store here in Stillwater is at 801 East Lakeview Road. And you can also shop online for a wide variety of things that are kind of higher end curated items. Donate your goods, but you can also donate your money. You can help us tell our story. I'm always amazed how many people don't know that we are a nonprofit. They think because we're a store, we're a for-profit, but we are a nonprofit organization, and we help the community just like Regional Food Bank, Infant Crisis Services, and nonprofits like that. You can like us on social media and visit us for more information at Goodwill. So with that, I will close and stand for cross-examination. If anybody has questions, I will give free legal advice, but I always warn you, free legal advice is worth what you pay for it. So, questions?
Do you do it down at that main building?
We were
on
fully,
Reno? Is it on Reno?
we used to have what they called sheltered workshops. And so if someone had a significant disability and they couldn't, work in a store, we would have a sheltered workshop area. That has fallen into disuse because a more integrated approach is what people say those in the disabled community want to do. And so we integrate, like David's video is a good example. We just have to make some adjustments, but we try to make sure we integrate whatever your disability is, whatever your impediment is, we integrate you into the normal stream of commerce.
But when you're sitting down working with a client, you have counselors who do that?
For like training? Yeah, we do most of that. We do some of it on the Mobile Job Connection Center, which we take out in the community, but we do a lot of it at what's called Goodwill Career Pathway Institute, GCPI, at our office in Oklahoma City. We have classrooms there. We also go out to nonprofits. So if any of you are associated with a nonprofit in Stillwater, maybe they serve a clientele that needs some help with job training, we will come for free. We'll provide job training courses, and we also do a lot of stuff virtually so that people could tag into our courses online. Yes, sir. How do we integrate with state rehab services? We used to have two programs with them. COVID kind of shut that down for us. So we partner indirectly through Dale Rogers Training Center. We partner with Dale Rogers. And I don't know how many of you know about Dale Rogers, but it is a terrific nonprofit in Oklahoma City. and it helps people with significant disabilities. Yes. We encourage large boxes of cash. Those are always great. We actually had a donation last year. Somebody gave us a bunch of sweaters wrapped up in a ball, and inside was $42,000 in cash. And one of our associates found it, and God bless her, she reported it, and we were able to trace it because it had a bank deposit slip, and the guy just messed up and didn't mean to give us 42,000. I thought maybe he hadn't intended to do that, but we were able to return the money to him, and he gave her a $1,000 reward. But there's virtually, if you go on our website, we've got a list of things that we can't take. So we don't take guns, knives, swords, things of that nature. We don't take gasoline operated lawnmowers and things of that nature. But if you think about it, most of the things that wouldn't pose a danger by being in our store are okay. So if it's a machete, I don't know, we might take it and put it on shop Goodwill, but we probably wouldn't put it in the store.
Okay, let's give Jim a great big hand.
Jimmy, I did bring a copy of our book, More Than a Store. And because Tish did such an outstanding job as Sergeant at Arms, and although she did not give us any prizes, we're going to give her a prize.
Wonderful.